Thank you. Thank you for being here today. As Cindy kindly mentioned, we're probably the session between you and a beverage at the bar. So we're going to try and make this a little bit of fun, but cover a very important topic. AI is everywhere right now. Every conference, every headline, every product demo. But for multifamily leaders, the real question isn't what AI can do. It's actually what value it's creating in our day-to-day operations. So today we're going to cut through some of that noise, focus on real examples, real lessons, and what organizations are actually building today to drive efficiency and growth. So with that, we have a great group of leaders here. We're short one. We tried to add one. We'll see how this goes. But I want to take a little bit of time and have them introduce herself. So we'll start here. Cindy.
Great. Thank you. My name is Cindy Fisher. I'm the president of KETTLER. We are a vertically integrated company that does multifamily land development, investments, and operations, and been in business for, it'll be 50 years coming in another year.
My name is Adam Eberlin, president and co-founder of a company called PayReady. And we've been in business for about 10 years. And we have about 5 million units that use our product. And happy to be here today.
Hi, Chris Blackman, Managing Director of Technology at Rose Associates. Rose Associates, 100-year-old business, multifamily operator, owner, developer, mainly focused in New York City. Really excited to talk AI with everybody, not just practical, but really, how's it working for everybody in this panel.
Thank you for that. And I'm Jeff Duerstock. I'm Vice President of National Sales for Anchor Utility. We're a utility billing and expense management platform, been in business 17 years, and excited to facilitate this conversation today. One of the biggest challenges right now with AI is not really figuring out where it belongs inside the business. Is it a tool? Is it a strategy, a department? So I want to kick this conversation off. I'll start here with you, Cindy. How are your organizations defining where AI fits? Not a standalone initiative, but what part of everyday operations?
Thanks. Well, to answer your question, yes, to all three of those, right? It is a strategy. It is a department. It's all of those things. And as we stepped back and started looking at where AI was going to fit, it's really been a 2-year strategy that we've been developing, because when AI started emerging, as we were seeing it in the product side, products were coming out obviously with AI embedded in them. And then we started to seeing what was coming in the world, right? ChatGPT, everything else that everyone had access to. And this is one of those technologies you can't stop your employees. They're just out there using this personally. They're using it. They want to bring it in like tomorrow, yesterday. And you can't do it that way. We're still running an organization, an operation. And recently in a conference I was at, it's like, we've got to put the scaffolding up around that to make sure we do it in the right way. So first, needed to build out the strategy. Where do we want that to fit in the organization? How do we want to build AI in and incorporate it in ways that are going to be most meaningful? 2, how do we do that? And it really is a top-down approach. It is strategic. So from there, going into implementation, we really had to establish how do we organize around that. So it really is all three of those things you mentioned.
Appreciate that.
Look who I found.
We found somebody.
We found him. Welcome to the stage, Dustin Lacey. Thank you so much.
Dustin, we'll let you get settled, and if you want to say a quick hello to our audience today.
Yeah, thank you guys for coming today. Glad you found it. I wasn't able to. Excited to talk AI. Let's jump in.
Appreciate that. Adam, you want to talk about a little bit about defining where AI fits in the organization?
Yeah, what I've noticed with AI companies, and we put our product into lots of different property management companies, that some are very familiar with AI and some aren't. And the problem I keep finding is that folks are taking these tools and then asking themselves, like, what can I do with it? And they get caught up in, like, what are all the cool things I can do today to make AI work for me? And I think a better approach for all involved is to take a problem that you know exists, take something that you already kind of have your hands around. It's either monotonous or kind of frustrating, but you have a good grasp of what it looks like, and then apply AI to that specific problem. Because that way you understand what the outputs are, you understand the way it works within your community or your property or your region. So I think taking small chunks, looking at ideas that that you have a semblance of understanding on, and then just doing a better job. So that's the way I think AI is best implemented.
Chris.
You know, I love doing these because when you're further down the line, it's like, yes, Cindy, yes, Adam. But yeah, I think when we look at AI, you know, and you have to really choose, it's got to really work inside workflows that you're doing, not outside them. And one thing that we took our time on, very similar to Cindy, is we didn't rush into it, right? We didn't want to just take these point AI solutions. We wanted to have a tool that we can use across the different platforms. You know, we standardized on Microsoft, and that's where we knew we wanted to go. So we weren't going to rush in. We weren't going to rush into the perplexities of ChatGPTs. Now, anything that's out there, because now we knew if we're using Microsoft for everything else, now what are we going to do there, right? So our journey took some time, and now what we're seeing is that time that we spent delaying some of these decisions have actually paid off, right? Now we have the connectors to those other tools that are out there that we can leverage, where a year ago we wouldn't have had that. Now, and then we would have been a year in on a solution, or maybe 2 solutions or 3 solutions, that now we waited, we thought about it strategically, and we've been able to actually benefit from that delay, if you call it a delay.
Dustin, did you see any quick wins in your organization?
The quickest win for us was the application for communication. So we applied AI early in replacement of our chat tooling. So externally facing, we found that AI really communicates well if you expose it to the correct corpus of data. And the chatbots to that point had been kind of binary, very explicit, black and white, kind of if this, then this answer. We realized that lead management was a focus for us, but we hadn't been able to really do that well, particularly after hours. And we saw that 20% of our phone calls happened after hours. A significant amount of our prospect and resident base didn't like interacting with folks in the leasing office. That's just a certain reality. We've got 140 Class A communities in Phoenix and Las Vegas, and folks want immediacy and enablement. So we looked at routine workflows. Where could we apply it? And today we've got AI that we've enlisted from lead all the way to leave. So notice vacate, delinquency, applicant handling, which is a big workload for your property teams. Big surprise to us. AI can chase pay stubs. So really for us, if we aren't in the leasing office, which is 2/3 of the day, we want AI to be picking up the phone or responding to emails or handling SMS. And today that's, how we have mostly applied it. Internally, we've done some other things that have helped our teams manage that on our side of the ball. And I can speak to that in a little bit.
Appreciate that. I think all of us in a room, no matter what side of the industry you sit on, we all care about results. So to dive a little bit deeper, Chris, I want to circle back to you. Can you talk a little bit about some of the meaningful improvements you're seeing right now and what results those are driving?
Sure. Yeah, I think one thing you just said is we look at it as multiple things, right? We have our portfolio, we have our corporate, and we have an enterprise, right? And those pillars, right? So when I mentioned earlier, we settle on like Copilot, right? We know we can't develop a Copilot agent that's going to compete with the Elise AIs that are out there, right? So we're going to say, which we did, right? Elise AI is what we are going to be using. And we found just that, right? People are interacting with us outside working hours. Our hours, 9 to 5 is not where it's at, right? People are working, they're coming home, they're sitting up at night talking in their, to their spouse or others. Hey, I need a new apartment. And they're sending these queries in, right? Before implementing these tools, the next response they would get is maybe at 10, 11 o'clock in the morning when the leasing agent comes in, signs in, checks their emails, gets a cup of coffee, and then finally decides, let me get on these. So that entire process, lead to lease, right? We implemented AI and we're using it there. Let's use an example. And I love this is as we're getting so big, it's so hard to know who people are, where they are, right? People are moving all the time. We have over 250 properties that we manage. So we're leveraging AI where I can go in and I can ask, ask our, we're calling it Ask Amy, who's our CEO, Amy Rose. Hey, who's the property manager? Who's the leasing agent at this property? Or I met John. Where does John, right? And the tool is going to come back and answer you these things, right? So at the corporate level, at the enterprise level, and obviously at the leasing level.
Cindy, I want to circle to you. Are you seeing similar results, unique results in your portfolio?
So I'm going to leverage a little bit of your answer, but in two different ways. So we had already started bringing in, as you mentioned, like Elise AI, Renew. We're using Elise for collections too, but that with that embedded AI functionality in it, and we're seeing those same results. So we always look at everything and we build a case study on everything. So there's nothing that we do that we start that we don't look at the current state, measure it, put these in place, and then we measure the ROI. And we saw significant results from that, which we have shared with our clients and our owners, and they're very excited about it, and which has caused them to engage and say, yes, we want to bring it in. And it's taking those pain points off of our teams. So that's been great. That's that product level. And that's important for us to keep leaning in there and utilizing those tools, because to your point, we're not going to build it better than you are. We're not a tech company. We're a real estate company. So what's the next level of that is we really started looking at and built out case studies or use cases for agentic AI. And that's our next level, is where is agentic AI going to come in into something that you said, you got to break it down process by process, task by task, because it's taking tasks out. Where is that work that can be done by the computer that's being done with a computer can be done by a computer? That's not my quote. That's somebody else's, I'm sure. But I love it. So it was looking at that, and we came up with them. And with Yardi, we will be testing 8 agents this month and starting to look at that, all focused around the month-end close. What does that do? That takes up a lift off of the site teams. It also gets you to correct, accurate reporting that feeds into your back-end financials. So that's how we're looking at it. That's how we're going to measure that all the way through to make sure that we are going to get that value. But it started with evaluating from the teams, where are those biggest pain points? When we were asked to put together as part of this beta program, the use cases, we came up with about 40 of them in about a 2-hour session, sitting in the room with multiple people in our team. I just sat in there with them and said, all right, we're going to map this out, because I'm a process geek, by the way. So that's what I do. We did that 40 use cases, just boom, 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 boom. But we all brought it together and said, you know what? Look at this month-end close process. Wow. Could we make this more efficient? So that's where the agents are going to come in. And then as we're looking at AI for the analytics side, that's going to allow us to get those insights that we need so we can really get to performance management and more deep dive into our analytics. And that was the culmination of, where our strategy needed to go. But with the products already seeing great results, that really convinced us there's a way to do this. But now with agents, we're able to take that through our workflows and redefine those and create roles that are really going to help those teams with their day-to-day performance. And I do think it's going to show results to our owners in their reporting, their financials, their NOI. As a platform, it's what's going to build capacity, right? And as a platform, we only get paid so much in fees. That's what's going to help us create capacity and profitability at that platform level.
I love that example. Oh, sorry, Chris, go ahead.
I was just say, I want to tag on to that, because that agent piece there is, and when I mentioned earlier around how we strategically did not rush into things, that agent connector that Yardi is coming out with now will enable us to take our internal agents and connect to the Yardi agents that they have built, that they know the best of, right? We don't know it the best. Yardi does, right? They know their system. And that's what I love, right? If we looked at this and rushed into this, half the time you wouldn't be doing it, because you're so far down another path that it almost doesn't make sense to get out of. So
and it's moving so fast, right? This is moving so fast. We just had these conversations right at the end of the year, and we're already testing 8 agents in March. I didn't build those. However, we opened up our operations and said we're ready for it, and that's that preparation that you talked about. Get ready for it, and then you can make this move through the organization. But you've got to be really thoughtful about that change management and how you bring that into your organization.
That's great. I mean, we opened this conversation that we'd give real examples, and so I think the month-end close is a real example. Is there any other groups in here that have considered AI in that aspect? Just a couple. So that's great. Shifting the conversation a little bit, I want to talk about what this means for teams. Dustin, I want to come to you in terms of how are you using AI to support teams through automation, training, or decisions?
We're being very delicate about it. The way we speak about AI in our organization is that it is in complement, not replacement. We mentioned change management. Change management is a big piece of this. I think that, we jumped in pretty quickly and pretty hard, and co-development of tooling, and because we realized we needed to own the data layer itself. Because one of the challenges with all these AI tools that you see out here is that they're subject to the whims of the PMS. If the PMS chooses to allow them access, we were talking about delinquency earlier. If you're using a lease on Resman or RealPage, I don't think you had the ability to use that lease tool because they don't give you the ability to do so. And so we realized that mapping all the disparate data and doing all these different things so that we could then contextualize our data and use it in a specific way has been successful for us, but it's taken a long time to do that. So I would urge everybody that's considering AI here to understand kind of, what the true abilities of their AI is as it lives on top of where kind of the work gets done. It's a communication tool, it's a helper, it creates efficiencies and all these things that it professes to do, but you need to make sure that it can in fact do that it has the access to data to do that well. Our biggest challenge really has been saying to our individuals that are at the property level specifically that, hey, while we're freeing you up to do higher value things by taking, first touch lead response, that's now off your plate. Boom, that's done. Then we started, introducing AI voice after hours and then said, hey, this really works well. By answering the phone in an industry that's endemically very bad at this. I think you already said at a conference a year or so ago that we answer our phones 30 to 40% of the time during leasing hours. I mean, that's awful. And when you're thinking about Phoenix, which is, has a supply challenge right now with so much supply, we don't have the luxury of not doing that well. So, really, you have to be very judicious how you message this stuff and message the communication as you're starting to remove these things. And of course, you're paying attention to how the AI is working as well. It's, a critical piece of this. But again, it does come down to simply immediacy and enablement. Folks expect you to answer the phones, whether they be a prospect, an applicant, a resident. They expect to get answers, and whether they get that answer from if you, for example, call Verizon or Cox for your broadband cable, an IVR tree or a live body or an AI agent, in our case, Taylor, if you can provide them answers quickly and facilitate the finding of whatever they're looking to do, right? Check in on their application status, see when their work order is going to be serviced, these different little things, you're going to see that those folks are happier. As a consequence, your leasing teams will be happier. Your maintenance teams will be happier because their job now becomes easier. They themselves have the ability to remove kind of the mundane and the routine off their plate and focus on mainly the residents. And this was a surprise to us, but 80% of our inbound communications on any given day at Mark Taylor are resident related. And we thought it'd be more 50-50 with lead management and prospects. It's not. Our residents represent a significant amount of work for us. They come with high expectations. They're a Class A resident. They're a wonderful demographic, but they know what good looks like and they expect it. And so for us, it's been walking a very fine line of negotiating kind of the contours of what does this mean for me? Should I be concerned about my job? Jobs insecurity is a very real thing. As well as, saying, hey, our sole job is in service of providing somebody a home and all that means. And AI makes us better and allows us to be better at that and frees you up to be better at that. And this demographic currently, and I think the younger demographic that many of us employ at our properties and within our organizations, they have a different mindset about work-life balance and work and professional, and they want to be happy about the job they work in. So you allow them by instead of asking them to be generalists every day, you allow them to specialize more in different areas. They can derive a greater sense of value from their jobs, and we're seeing value there in terms of retention from an employee standpoint too, which was a unintended consequence that's been a happy surprise.
great perspective. Adam, I'm curious, have you seen it change anything in your hiring profiles or your skill set, or anything to add there in terms of team related?
Yeah, I think Dustin said it well. Like, we're hiring people that do have a different sense of work-life balance. They want to have fun. They want to connect with humans, and especially on site, and the sales folks that we have and the account managers, if we can get rid of the mundane that they do every day and give them a chance to focus on real problems that real humans can interact with, it does empower them, because there's no replacing real human interaction. Getting rid of the repetitive emails and the repetitive tasks, questions that can be answered quickly, that's great, because it really does allow for these folks to have more of a sense of pride in what they do. So so I would say that's probably the biggest change we've seen.
Appreciate that. This next piece gets a little interesting because I think we all agree not everything should be automated. And so, especially in multifamily, where trust and relationships are so important. Cindy, I'm going to come to you. How are organizations deciding where AI interactions make sense versus where human touch points still remain central?
Yeah, that's a great question. And first of all, I'd like to get some of that work-life balance. Couldn't I figure that one out too?
We're not.
It's always with the young people. What happened to our generation?
We don't get that. That's the younger folks.
No, I think that it is a great question, because you hear it a lot where companies are trying to lean in and make sure that that human touch or that human piece is still embedded in this, and it is. I think we've already heard this across this panel. You're not taking this out of it. You really aren't. What we're doing is getting people to be able to be working in the aspect of their job that's the most value added, and that's what makes people feel good. And when we say on the property time, it's getting them back on the property side, getting the teams back to doing the things they love, leasing apartments. They love interacting with their residents. They love taking care of the property, and getting them out of those things that are, middle office, back office functions that they don't love. And quite frankly, we train and train and train and train and train. I'll use the word accrual about 10,000 times, and we still have problems with it. So let's get that all out of there. But what we really needed to do first, like everything else I love to do, we started with that customer journey, right? So we mapped out the customer journey, and we looked at all those touch points. And that's when you can start, and this started even before the AI conversation. Where do you bring in technology to help with that journey that helps with the employee interaction as well as the customer interaction? And where are they gathering that value? Just like bringing agents in and you break your process down, I think you need to understand that customer journey, where those interacting points are. And then you can leverage technology, AI, or whatever, and really find out where that human aspect of it does come into more importance. That means you got to listen to your customer. That means you've got to have intel on what is important to your client, what's important to your customers. So doing RCX surveys, things like that we really try to lean in on what do residents care about. I know the surveys that come out, they're great. We do our own. We really, really lean into that, brought in a customer experience lead just for that purpose. So we could understand the voice of the customer, but also with the voice of the employee, because that's that balance. And I kind of put the journey in the middle, and I want to look at those two pieces and balance that out. So the first thing was really getting that in place. We've been doing that as we've been bringing in technology and solutions. And to me, AI is no different than that. And understanding where do people feel comfortable interacting, with an AI, with an agent or whatever, and when do they really want that human interaction, and where can you make those soft handoffs that feel very authentic and very real and frictionless, ultimately to those residents.
Chris, I'm going to come to you in terms of in your operations. Are you seeing a similar experience? Maybe talk a little bit about the leasing experience. Are you doing anything there in terms of balancing that aspect?
I think very similar with what Cindy said is you have to have the person be that, have the empathy, right? Have that human connection. We all like to engage with people, right? We are in this industry, right? Like this is what it is. We are people, right? And what we have to make sure is when you have an agent that's doing something, that there's always going to be a follow-up when the agent flag something, whether that be a sentiment score or something, that something's not right here, right? Like, and then make sure your team follows up with it. So I wanted to just go back to something, you said earlier is we've actually had to develop dashboards. We call them red flag dashboards, where there is follow-up that is needed, right, from our agents from Elise, right? So Elise will tell you, hey, listen, these are some follow-ups that you need to do, whether that be some, training with on the model, like, or unknown things where they follow up on, like, just because we say to the bot, like, don't take this any further, right? This isn't going well, or this needs human interaction. Plus, we're truthfully kind of concerned about where the model would go if you start allowing it to get into those conversations, right? I mean, who knows, right? Yeah, we'll give you a discount on your rent, not a problem, right? Make you happy. Like, whoa, hold on, right? So the leasing team, like you said, they are loving it, right? They don't have to worry about scheduling that first tour or anything like that, or changing tours. We do find we have to follow up with them to make sure they've confirmed the tour that has since been confirmed, that they're actually going to show up and things like that. But they do like it. It's freeing them up to do that more important work, that human touch work, answering the phones. That is, that is something else. To your point, I can't believe how many phone calls we do get, whether that be, in New York, we actually have a lot of affordable components. So I can't tell you, our AR team knows, some of these residents by name, that's been in there for 50 years, that calls every month. My check has not been cashed yet. Did you receive my check? Right. So now, we could leverage AI for that, and it'll tell them that, yes, your check has been received, but those people don't actually use the AI model. But the phone calls are quite a bit.
I like the fact that you added in a little bit of that governance element of when to stop, because AI can go wrong. Just read the Wall Street Journal article, or I think it was Wall Street Journal, about the newsroom that got a vending machine that was with AI, and they allowed it to interact with the employees, and they had it ordering all kinds of stuff that was not within policy. So it's a great article if you want to read, and leave it up to a newsroom to break something, but trying to probably protect their own jobs, but it does go wrong.
Of course.
Speaking of when it does go wrong, I think it's important. We're all using different types of AI that are great in the market. But one of the things I think is missing with our AI platforms is a way to be able to check the work. And so oftentimes these AI agents and these AI companies, they have a kind of a black box system where you tell it a problem and they go in there and they fix it and they go, hey, it's done. I think it's important that you have a system where you can go in and see what work they got done. What did they check? What did they change about this prompt that allowed for a different version of a conversation like this? And a good AI company, like we have clients that go in and they actually look at our AI training model. They see what we're doing. They understand it, because if it's sitting behind the scenes, then it doesn't educate you either. So it's nice to be able to see what's happening, how it's happening, and how people are making the decisions. And also the way that we talk about these interactions, current residents, they just need to pay rent. They're pretty easy. Those conversations aren't all that sensitive. Where it gets sensitive is when you have somebody who's moved out of a unit and they've got a couple of kids and they're looking at getting into a new apartment. They don't have much time. They've got a full-time job, maybe two, and they want to figure out how to get on a payment plan, how to get something paid. And they don't want to have to keep pushing zero over and over again. There's a sensitivity to the way in which residents need to be handled. And I think that it can't be one size fits all. You have to really understand each individual resident and how you can take best care of them. So,
yeah, I think, it's safe to say that balance between efficiency and experience becomes really, really important.
Yeah.
Let's look ahead a little bit. 5 years from now, I think we can all agree everyone's going to be using AI in some form. Dustin, I want to come to you in terms of what will separate companies that truly gain an AI advantage from simply using AI.
It's a broad question. I think the companies that are able to map all of their data and leverage that for insights and operational value are going to be the companies that win. We've got a lot of disparate tools in this industry. You're using this for renewal, you're using this for lease execution, you're using this for websites. If you're able to operate from a single consolidated platform, one of the things that's valuable for us with Union is that we are on their websites all the way through lease execution and use all their AI. So we are able to handle the diversity of different inbound questions and calls. And of course, warm handoffs are really important. We said that up here earlier. There's just some things that AI is not going to be able to do. But I think the holy grail, and I think the PMSs are trying to push to this. I'm wondering how well they're going to do it, given kind of the predominant PMSs in our space. Most of them buy versus build, and then kind of bolt on their different functional pieces. I think Yardi probably and Entrata have the most kind of coherent end-to-end platform. And I haven't heard much about Entrata, but we do follow Yardi and have been impressed by some of the things that they're doing. But I think really for us, it is about being able to just unleash the power. I mean, AI is really, really incredible from a capability standpoint. We've all seen it. We all understand that. But how can it start surfacing the unseen for us? And how can we start leveraging that to make decisions in real time, decisions that yield the most optimal outcomes in ways that we can't even really anticipate today. And I think that that's all going to be predicated on being able to take the entirety of your data and place a context layer, an AI context layer on top of it, and allow it to effectively understand the operations of your business and either remove workload or routine, or facilitate whatever it is that you're doing at a higher order way. So almost like a force multiplier. That's where I think we'll be in 5 years, probably sooner, actually.
Makes sense. Chris, I remember in our pre-conversation, you talking a lot about operational integration. Do you see that as a winning strategy in terms of how companies would separate themselves in the next 5 years?
Definitely. I'll just comment real quick is, when you say 5 years, if Skynet's not here by then we're all winning, right? Just how fast we've done. And, I look at this and say the connected systems that are there. And that's why I went back earlier about how excited I am, through MCP and be able to connect to all the different models out there and what we will be able to do, right? I look at 9 months ago, before we really had the ability to do reasoning and things like that in some of these models, I would query our Copilot agent and it would go out and it would look and say, I have all this data, right? And I would ask it a challenge question. And all our old SOPs, by the way, just history, we recently migrated from MRI to Yardi, but we have years and years and years of data and SOPs and information all around MRI, right? And what would the model do? It would go out and say, well, I see a lot of that data, so most likely I'm going to weight it higher and I'm going to give you an answer based on what I think because of all this data that's out there. When I turned on the reasoning model, it was like night and day. It knew, it's like, wait a minute, this is some of this new stuff here, and the latest data is all around Yardi, is all around what we're doing, right? So there was a conversation on a panel earlier around how, data, you got to clean up the data. You got to clean it. Yes, you do need clean data. But if your model is right and you've trained it right, you might not have to clean up as much as people think you do, right? Because it can ignore the garbage that's out there in your environment. We have terabytes of data. I'm sure does everybody, if not more, right? And that was the big challenge for us, right? Is how to get it out there, how to make sure it's accurate. And let me tell you, that's why I can't even think of 5 years. I just can't. I just, what has been done in the last year alone, what has been done in the last 6 months alone, what's going to happen next month, right? Is blowing my mind, right? Just on everything, on every scale.
I mean, it's really allowed us to close 2 of our leasing offices. So we're Class A. I mean, these, again, I mentioned earlier how the expectations persist with the Class A demographic. And we've got 2 properties where we fully close our leasing offices now, all on the back of the capabilities of AI. So, and that's today. And, I think if I were in the audience, I'd be like, yeah, but what does that mean for the experience of your folks? This year, our company was named #1 in the country for Tally Score, which is Jay Turner's big customer voice metric. And so, you would go, well, if you're replacing AI and technology, and obviously the natural progression here is that AI replaces everybody in the lease office. That isn't the case. You have warm handoffs, but we've closed leasing offices, and not at the expense of customer satisfaction.
But a year ago, would that even have been a thought?
2 years ago, it wouldn't have been a thought. We started moving that direction 2 years ago. Naturally, not with that being the end goal, but because it just was organically kind of how we were moving. And here we are today, and it's interesting.